What up, Wizards? It's Dev and Digby. He's down here too. Don't forget, we're from So Boomtig, and we like it a magic. And I am finally ready to give you the first deck tech of the season. It took me long enough, right? I mean, we're at Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to all the Wizards stateside. I'm glad that you have room for more than one turkey today. It's me. I'm the other turkey. So gather the whole family around that table there and pass me some of the meatballs that you make with chili sauce and grape jelly, like in a crock pot. Do you guys do that? Brittany's in there making a whole batch of them right now. They're delicious. But do that, and we'll talk about the first deck tech of the season. What did the patrons want to see? They wanted to meld something. That much was obvious, but did they want to see Jun Titania? No, they didn't want to. No, not at all, actually. One of the least voted for decks on the poll, in fact. Did they want to see Urza? No, huge kind of surprise to me. I figured Daddy Urza would be the first thing people wanted to see, but no. Everybody else, just like me, all of my patrons apparently, love little brothers. They just love the lovable loser. I'm a Luigi man myself, so we did end up on Mardu Mishra for the first deck tech of the season. And let me tell you, it drove me nuts. That's right. This is one of those first deck techs of the season that I obsessed over for like 6 days in a row, 24 hours a day. Probably should be doing Christmas shopping, but nobody's gotten gifts yet. Little Timmy's not going to get anything in his stocking this year. Sorry, Timmy, I don't have any children to clarify, but still, this deck has kind of consumed my entire being for the last 5 or 6 days now. And that's mostly because for a long time, I couldn't get the guy to do the thing. But before you know who the guy is, or what the thing is for that matter, you have to know what the cards do. So I'm going to do something I don't do very often. There are so many words on these cards, at least the ones that you have to meld together, that we're going to do a little bit of a reading in case you're driving, you're listening to me like it's a podcast or something like that. You're at work and you can't look at the screen to read the cards. I'm going to read a couple of the cards that are involved in melding Mishra in case you either haven't heard them or you've forgotten, because again, there's so many freaking words on this card. Mishra, Lost to Phyrexia reads, whenever you attack, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of attacking creatures. If Mishra, claimed by Gix, and a creature named Phyrexian Dragon Engine are attacking, and you both own and control them, exile them, then meld them into Mishra Lost to Phyrexia. It enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. Phyrexian Dragon Engine is 3 mana for a 2/2 artifact creature with double strike. When it enters the battlefield from your graveyard, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. You may unearth this for 3 and 2 red. When you meld them, you get Mishra Lost to Phyrexia, who is a 9/9 legendary artifact creature. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, choose 3. Target opponent discards 2 cards. Mishra deals 3 damage to any target. Destroy target artifact or planeswalker. Creatures you control gain menace and trample until end of turn. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 until end of turn. And or create 2 tapped Power Stone tokens. Thanks, Cultured Dev. Now, just like your dad, this thing's backside is freaking amazing, and it doesn't look too hard to clap these two things together. Yes, I'm still talking about your dad, but I'm also talking about these cards, right? I mean, all it takes is playing the Dragon Engine on turn 3, you play Mishra on turn 4, he gets attacking on turn 5, you win the game. Hey, if opponent somehow kills your Dragon Engine on turn 3, you can still play Mishra on 4, unearth the Dragon Engine on 5 if you get the land drops, swing with both of them, boom, boom, boom. It's super easy to get them melded. No, it's not. I would be a liar if you told you that. I think there might be other content creators telling you it's so easy to look at the 20 games in a row I melded this thing. No, it's not. It took me close to 30 games to meld this one single time. That's because at the end of the day, it is a pretty telegraphed series of events. As soon as your opponent sees a Dragon Engine, they're like, oh, well, they're also playing Mishra, I would imagine, and you are. It turns out they're exactly right about you in this one case, but not about most of the other stuff they might think about you. You smell good, in fact. No, the way you need to look at these cards are that they both do kind of good stuff, sort of, but sometimes, and I mean 1 out of every 20 games or so, they're going to come together and win you the game 9 times out of 10, I would assume. I mean, I won the one game where I melded this. I mean, it was a long uphill battle, but we finally made it. And it turns out that, yeah, this just forces scoops when you kill a planeswalker and a creature, and suddenly you have a huge attacker and other stuff. So it turns out that Mishra is pretty ridiculous when you meld him, but most of the time, neither he nor the Dragon Engine is going to get melded. So you're trying to get value out of them in other ways. That mostly means 2 things. That means, in terms of Mishra, you need to play a deck that does a fair amount of attacking, right? Because really, The drain whenever you attack with a creature is actually kind of a pretty attractive part of this card's text, right? I mean, just forget the meld. The fact that you're doing damage no matter what when you attack, whether you get through or not, actually pretty sweet, and protects you from crackbacks by gaining your life too, so that's fine. But Dragon Engine also wants to be in a deck that's attacking, because it attacks pretty well at unearths and all that, but it also wants to be in a deck that can empty its hand relatively quickly. I mean, you want to have basically no cards in your hand when you unearth your Dragon Engine, which means that you can't play a deck that has a bunch of 5 and 6 drop creatures and stuff. So you want to keep things relatively low on the curve, and you want to go attacking. But there's other value to extract from these guys, and that's what I'm looking at when building this deck, because Mishra is really good in board stalls. He's great at letting you win the game when you wouldn't otherwise be able to attack, because he's stacking up damage one way or the other. Phyrexian Dragon Engine is an artifact, so you probably want to play some cards that care about artifacts. So adding all of that together, what we're looking for is a deck with a low curve that likes to attack, but is still good in board stalls and can grind well, and to some extent might care about artifacts here and there. And it turns out that there is the perfect archetype in Standard already to take advantage of all of those things. That's right, it's the only cold anvil deck, what you expect. Yep, 4 Epicures, play set of Harvesters is what you gotta do to blow your sack the blood tokens to the anvil you already know, and then combine with the damage from Mishra. When you're attacking, you can get your opponent's life total down to 0, like, really fast. But there's actually another thing in here that can get us drained without even having to get in for combat damage. And, you've probably already got me here. As soon as you saw the deck was Mardu, probably knew what I was up to. That's right, it's going to be Elasil Core, because we're getting married. And that way I get to be with my baby. You can come to the wedding, you're invited, just bring food. And in the meantime, I'll be getting 2 damage whenever I sacrifice a 1/1 to an anvil. But between Elasil Core and Mishra being in the deck, I decided there's already a bunch of legends in here. Let's put a bunch of other ones in the pool and see what happens. So, that's right, it's a legends deck. Now, I think that one cringy rap per video is probably enough, but there are a ton of other legends that just kind of incidentally ended up in this deck. But they're all in here for a reason. I didn't just shoehorn in a bunch of legends. I mean, they all do good stuff in specifically a deck like this. We're playing 2 copies to begin with of Ashnod. We get to play a brand new card that I'm really excited to play, and it does cool stuff. But we're also playing a couple of copies of Jadar, a copy of Squee, and 2 copies of Gix to get the legend train rolling. Now, there's kind of a lot of accidental synergy just on the page right now, right? Like, Gix is pretty good with both Squee and Jadar, because you can kind of draw 2 cards off of both of them, and the curve of Jadar into Gix tends to be really, really good. Draw 2 on turn 3 is pretty nice. But Jadar is also nice with Mishra, right? Because again, it's kind of 2 creatures attacking. That's extra damage off of Mishra. Note that Squee doesn't work the way you want it to with Mishra. You get the damage from Squee attacking, but the token comes into play tapped and attacking, so it misses the trigger from Mishra, which is kind of lame, but still. Squee works pretty nicely for getting us some reach in the late game, making sure we can deal that extra little bit of damage, right? And Jadar also pretty good for just sacrifice fodder. Like, if we need something to sacrifice to Ashnod, pretty good little card to have, because we'll just get another zombie EOT anyway. But Ashnod, pretty neat thing. You're not going to actually be, in my experience at least, you're not going to be sacrificing too many things to Ashnod. But it does make a Power Stone token if you do so. And even though there's not a whole lot of stuff we're casting using Power Stone tokens, there's a lot of little stuff in this deck that you can use Power Stone tokens for, not the least of which, really probably the most of which, is just sacking them to Oni Cold Anvil. And for what it's worth, if you needed more stuff that you can use Power Stone mana on, there's always Phyrexian Dragon Engine's Unearth ability. You can crack blood tokens with a Power Stone token, so that's kind of nice. And you can activate Goro's ability with Power Stone tokens if you really want to as well. We're playing 1 copy of that, as well as a single copy of Ratadabric and a copy of Lisa. Now, Lisa is our only 5-mana card in the deck, and we're only playing 1 copy of this. We don't need it in a lot of games, but it is a nice little piece of insurance to make sure that your Mishra doesn't completely die forever. Same thing with Ratadabric, we have so many legends in the deck that I'm only carrying 1 copy of this, but when you do get it, there's some pretty exciting plays. You're going to get Ratadabricked up looking at some of the stuff you can do with this card, right? I mean, just the fact that it can bring back your Ashnod as a 2/2, hey, that's kind of a cool little ability. But making sure that when your Mishra dies to removal, which it will, it comes back as a 2/2, and it can't meld. Just want to throw that out there. If you get a 2/2 Mishra token, you can't meld it, but you can still keep swinging for extra damage. But in case you ever wanted to interact with your opponent, there's a couple of removal spells in the deck. We got 3 copies of Go for the Throat and 2 copies of Infernal Grasp. You can switch this around if you want to, especially as more and more artifact creatures take over the format. You know, you're never going to kill the Phyrexian Flesh Gorger with the Go for the Throat. So you might want to do some finagling here with the numbers and all that, but mostly you want to play 5 main deck removal spells in best of 3 right now, 6 at the most, and I think this is probably about right, because mostly we're looking to grind games out anyway. We do need removal, don't get me wrong, but we mostly want to like block and sack stuff to anvil. Right? So we don't care too much about huge creatures being on the other side of the table. We care about creatures that we have to deal with because they do something broken on the other side of the table. It's good to have some removal spells for those. Now here are your lands. Let's take a quick look at these because I think it's living proof that it's not too difficult to construct a Mardu mana base right now, and it'd be pretty comfortable. I mean, there's 15 black sources, 14 red sources, 11 white sources because you don't need quite as much white in this deck, but there are some things I want to point out, notably the channel lands, which are more important even in this deck than they are in a lot of decks, right? We got a ton of legends in this thing, so it's pretty easy to channel these for really cheap. And quick little side note here, if you're looking for yet another thing you can do with the Power Stone token from Ashnod, channel these with those. But we don't have a ton of removal spells, so Viganjo being another removal spell is sometimes really important. Hold on to it for dear life unless you really need a white source. So Kenzin is just more things to sacrifice or swing with and getting damage from Mishra or whatever. And then Takenuma can get back a Mishra, or a Dragon Engine, or a Ratadabric, or a Lisa, or any of the really powerful creatures in this deck you might want to get a hold of once they die. Now here's your sideboard, not actually too complicated on this end either, you know, 2 Duress against the control matchups. We've got 2 Voltage Surge for when we need a little bit more lower end removal, or we know that we're going to be on the draw, and that helps. Reckoner Bankbuster to draw cards is also an artifact, by the way. Same thing with Unlicensed Hearse. We have to, you know, sacrifice this to an anvil in dire straits. Like, that can be a thing that we do, but mostly we want to hose the graveyard decks with an Unlicensed Hearse and then get in for a million. Tenacious Underdog is in the sideboard, although there was 1 copy in the main deck forever when I was building this thing, and I think that might still be the right thing to do. But again, if you need to be grinding, Tenacious Underdog is a good way to go. There's an Abrade in the deck for taking out artifacts, and also if we just need some more stocky removal. Destroy Evil to take out enchantments, and for when we need removal against those Shieldreds of the world and whatnot. And then 2 Phyrexian Flesh Gorger again, because aggro is not a super fun matchup some of the time. Matter of fact, on that same tip, speaking of that, I think it's about time for a coffee break. Hello again, Wizards. Time again for your favorite part of the video according to the comments section. We're going to take a quick little breather here before we get to power rankings and example game and all that. Don't worry, there is an example game in this video. I wouldn't do that to you. There is one, but there's a couple of matchups that I want to bring up because I played about 35 games altogether with this deck, and again, only melded Mishra the one time. I've already shown that one to you. It happened. We won the game, but for the most part, you're going to be not doing that most of the time. You're mostly playing kind of a straight up and down Oni Cold Anvil game plan, but you also have a little bit of the Mardu Legends game plan. You got a little bit of the Meld game plan. It makes sense. The Mishra deck would be kind of a mishmash of ideas, but we are mostly... Solid joke, give me points for that, but we are mostly an Oni Cold Anvil deck. So what are the matchups looking like? Well, right now, the most popular matchup in Standard, at least on a competitive level, mostly because it won Worlds. Were you there? Did you know that Grixis won Worlds? Did that just slip past your radar? Grixis is probably the most popular deck in the format, and that held true after the first weekend of tournaments. 2 things can happen here. You can stick an Oni Cold Anvil, right? You can unearth a Phyrexian Dragon Engine and get some card draw that way. So you can grind, you can draw some cards. But for the most part, the Grixis engine draws cards much, much better than we do. That means the key to the Grixis matchup is often getting an anvil or even 2 in place, getting your key pieces in place and protecting them however you can. Or, for that matter, just sticking important pieces after your opponent's already used their removal spells. So that means baiting out the Infernal Grasp or the Voltage Surge or the Make Disappear or whatever, and then sticking that Mishra. But there's a ton of other mid-range decks in the format that, again, just aren't quite as value-driven as a deck like Grixis, and we tend to do very well against those decks. But we do have some problems. Against aggro, again, we sort of feel 50-50 if they can be on the play and get a bunch of really good stuff down on curve before we're really able to set up our game plan. There are times when aggro just kind of strikes too fast for us, but if we get an Oni Cold Anvil down, we block smartly, and we have a couple of important removal pieces into, a 5 toughness Mishra, it can be really difficult for them to recover from that. And again, once we start gaining life off of Ilkor, Oni Cold Anvil, Mishra, all that, then we can start attacking and winning the game. But also, just tempo decks like Mono Blue. As a matter of fact, we have clips from there it is. Yeah, clips from the Mono Blue tempo match. Pretty much how it goes every time. Yep, and then they land a Robin Williams and they just kill you. The Haughty Jin, or Tolarian Terror, whatever. One or the other, you're just dead. But I hate those matchups. Those are not good matchups. But we still have a fair amount of very favorable matches. It turns out one of our best matchups is against any deck looking to go wide, whether it's green-white tokens or the Bant Soldiers deck that's kind of all over the ladder right now. We tend to be pretty good against these decks because they want to stall out the game and develop their board state. We want to do the same thing, but they want to finish by getting through for combat damage, and we want to finish by using crazy aristocrat sacrifice tricks and stuff like that. And we tend to get the better end of the deal on that when it comes to really fighting down in the trenches and getting down and dirty and doing combat. I felt like this game was illustrative of not only that, but a bunch of other stuff this deck can do. It's a good way to illustrate the matchup. It's a good way to illustrate a lot of the things I've been talking about, but it also shows off things like sacrificing a Power Stone token to an Oni Cold Anvil, or Elisil Core getting in triggers for damage, or Mishra for the win. This game, I felt like, again, was pretty indicative of all the different things the deck can do, from getting an early start and getting a bunch of damage in to finishing with incremental drain triggers and whatnot. So sit back and enjoy. Here's green-white tokens. Good game, opponent, but let's take a look at these power rankings real quick. A final score of 67. Not too shabby, but not incredible either. Its deck kind of felt 50-50 a lot of the time I was playing it. Even though it went through a bunch of different iterations, I was never quite able to get it past what I felt was about 55%. But did I have fun? Yes. And it's 55% a win rate that'll actually get you to Mythic? Yes, while having fun. I mean, you get to Meld Mishra from time to time. You get Elisil Core triggers. You get to just play Oni Cold Anvil, which is a fun deck by itself. But you could add a bunch of other fun pieces. Every now and again, you get like a 2/2 Ashnod from a Ratadabric, or you bring back a Mishra with Elisa in your opponent's scoops. There's a lot of fun stuff this deck can do. And it's probably not even fully powered at the end of the day. You might notice I neglected to play Fable of the Mirror Breaker, even though we do have like Bloodtithe Harvester, Voldaren Epicure. There's stuff to copy in this deck, but with all the legends and whatnot, and other 3-drops I wanted to play, I just didn't end up playing Fable, and I didn't end up playing Shieldred, for that matter. I wanted to play Mishra, Ratadabric, and we were just kind of running out of 4-drop. room in our deck that wants to dump its hand before it can unearth a Phyrexian Dragon Engine. So I didn't want to have a bunch of 4 and 5 drops in my hand when I went to unearth that card. So I didn't end up on Shieldred, and maybe the fact that just adding 4 Fable of the Mirror Breaker and 4 Shieldred to a deck is like $350 by itself. Like Shieldred's like a $52 card right now, guys. I don't know if you knew that, but that probably influenced my decision not to include either of those cards in the deck too. Aside from that, like the video if you enjoy my style around here, or if you're into it, you can subscribe if you like me that much. I mean, I know no one subscribes on YouTube anymore. I mean, people can have like 2 million views on a video and have like 17 subscribers. I see it all the time, but if this would just be the one time this month you subscribe to a YouTuber, that would mean a lot to me. Thank you very much. Hit the bell for the notifications. Aside from that, you can watch me play some Magic on twitch.tv/SBMTGdev. Link in the description. Or if you really want to help around here, you can throw me $1 a month on patreon.com/SBMTG. Again, link in the description for that. $1 a month will help you vote. You can vote on what you want to see. So if you didn't want to see Mishra first, you should have voted, right? Just throw $1 in the pot every month on Patreon, and you can do that. You can influence the course of YouTube history. But for real, I think that's all I got for this one. I just want to give one final Thanksgiving Day shout out to the patrons who I really couldn't do any of this without. My 1s, my 5s, my 10s, all of you guys, all of you goyles. I really appreciate every single one of you. I literally couldn't do any of this without you. Patreon's basically the only way I get paid at this point. Is YouTube and Twitch don't really bring in all the money in the world. So I really, really appreciate you. Thank you. You are, except for probably my wife. She's at the top of the list, and I apologize for that. But you are what I am easily the most thankful for this season and pretty much every other. So thanks to the patrons. Appreciate you, Strictly Squad. But that's all I got for this one. Again, just let me know how you felt about all the stuff, and let me know what decks you want to see this season in the comments section. But I am done. I'm going to say it. I'm donezo for this one, kids. So I'll see you guys next time and catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.